Welcome to Connections and Conversations, an advocacy arena podcast, working to increase civic engagement and strengthen our communities. AJ and I met a few years ago via social media. I was drawn to the community work that he and his wife were engaged in that came about during the pandemic. They saw a need in their community and decided to meet it in the best way possible in that moment, feeding the homeless. Their small effort has now blossomed into a vital support system for many members of their community. And then I later learned that AJ had some very interesting childhood stories that I felt deserved to be highlighted because they too spoke to the importance and power of community. Hello, AJ. It is so good to be back here with you again in conversation. We have a little bit to catch up on. In the course of a year, because it's been about a year that we spoke about a project that you and your wife were devoted to and working on. But in between that period, we've been conversing a bit, and I heard you share an interesting story that just piqued my interest, and I would love for you to tell me a little bit more about that. First of all, let me just say welcome to Connections and Conversations.
Thank you.
I wanted you to tell us a little bit about your experience in community being helped by the people.
Yeah, Dee, it's interesting because when you're in the throes of growing up as a young person, there is a tendency, I think, to not be aware that you're in the presence of greatness. I know we hear that terminology quite a bit, but I can honestly say that for me, that was the case growing up in Hampton, Virginia, in a church, as my mother had me going to church every Sunday and being around a lot of educators. These folks were botanists before I even knew what a botanist was. They were principals, they were dentists, they were pharmacy technicians, they were pharmacists. And so being in proximity to that level of greatness, I think has informed my work even to this day and had me striving for excellence.
That's awesome. I would love for you to tell us about one of those wonderful individuals because we're talking about Hampton, Virginia. We're talking about an African American community. And one of those individuals really has national prominence and significance. Tell me a little bit about your experience with this individual and who she is.
Sure. So again, because my mother brought me up in the Christian tradition and her being a part of what was called the circle group at church, there were a lot of ladies in this women's group, of course, who brought different things to share in their meetings, everything from great food to great conversation. And I can remember going over to one of the ladies' homes on several occasions because my mother took me everywhere because my father worked late. And so I had to go with her, but I'd sit on the floor. And I can remember my mom asking this older lady that had these kind of cat rim glasses. She said, "Hey, Adolph is having a hard time with algebra. You think you could spend a couple hours with him on, maybe a Saturday if you're free?" And she said, "Sure." As I think back now, and we used to call her Miss Kathy, but I thought back in the last couple of years with the prominence of Hidden Figures, Miss Kathy, who was Miss Katherine Johnson, was my personal tutor. I can remember distinctly going over her house, and during circle group meetings, when they were done, Miss Kathy would take some time with me and show me how to approach math problems and formulas. And even then, I can remember as a kid thinking to myself, this lady is like super smart. I had no idea that she was a human computer.
Literally.
Yes. It's just so really interesting to think about her and the other ladies that worked at NASA getting their flowers now, being instrumental, understanding that Armstrong had personal conversations with Miss Johnson and the other ladies, who, for all practical purposes, that mission and the trajectory and the formulas that it took to get them into space and the understanding, without them, it doesn't happen.
Right?
I'm just really proud having known her and to also say that we had like a relationship, like seriously.
That is so awesome and such a heartwarming story. And I hope that you tell your kids and they tell their kids, because I think it's important to know that as time goes on, these historical figures that we seek to continue to amplify and help folks remember and celebrate that at the end of the day, they were human beings, people living in a community and contributing to that community. I just love that story.
You got me thinking, Dee, about another person who I had met before that went to my mom's church was Hazel O'Leary, who was the Secretary of Energy at one point.
Okay.
I can't remember what administration she was under, but just to give you an example of the folks that I had an opportunity, Congressman Bobby C. Scott, was at our church. Christine Darden, who was also at NASA,
Wow.
her daughter Janet and I grew up in church together. And she also worked at NASA, was a computer, and a brilliant mathematician, but even a more wonderful person. All of these folks were really just great people to be around. It's really interesting to know how much they influenced me when I didn't even know at the time that they were influencing me.
That is awesome. I really love amplifying these stories and really life experiences. Again, as I said, so much now because there is a derogatory ideology forming around African Americans, Black people who have contributed things or who are contributing things in the name of DEI. So it really warms my heart to be able to tell these stories. And I know that I remember from our last conversation that you won an award from a university there. Can you tell me a little bit about that award?
Yeah, so I guess that was about a year ago. I was contacted by the University of Virginia to say that I had been nominated for what was called, or is called, the John Castine III Award for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And it took me off guard. I had no idea that I was even being looked at for this. I'd seen where other people had been nominated and won this award, but the university emailed me and said, "Hey, you've won this award. We'd love for you and your wife to come. We're going to have lunch. We're going to celebrate you." And I was just really taken aback that this institution of higher learning would recognize little old me in my little bitty town. They had contacted the mayor of the city where I live. They had contacted numerous figures who, hold prominence even with me, to city council members, educators at the various schools in the city where I live. My supervisor had even written a letter of recommendation that I absolutely should get this award. And so it was really, really humbling. It makes you kind of be like, ooh, I don't know how to handle all this attention, but it does give a humbling effect and makes you want to do even more work and to be more accountable, if at all possible, to do everything right as much as you can.
Right. That is awesome, AJ, which leads me into the other thing that I want to talk to you about, and that is this wonderful project that you and your wife are engaged in. Would you tell folks a little bit about that project and how it came about?
Sure. So my wife, Adrienne, and I, during the height of COVID, we recognized that while things were shut down, we were both home, that there was still a large segment of our community that needed to eat. And, with everything shut down, nothing's moving.
Mm-hmm.
This was before restaurants had decided, well, we can do deliveries because people were still trying to figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided that we would go into the encampments in our city and just take food and start feeding people.
Wow.
We'd make visits, and what started off as maybe 5 to 10 folks went from that to 25. And then I think it went from 25 to about 60. And so literally our kitchen had bags lined up, pre-prepared with food in it and snacks for folks, and toilet paper and water and things that they need out there. And that led us to, during the week of Thanksgiving in 2020, I jokingly told my wife, I said, babe, we should start a nonprofit. And I was laughing, but she was not. And so she said, are you serious? I said, well, not really, but okay. And she says, well, yeah, let's do it. And so we filed our paperwork with the SEC, and the Lifeworks Project Incorporated was born.
Wow.
We took off in 2021 officially with the launch, and we've been able to feed our seniors and our differently abled members in the community. We have a micro grant program that helps folks with unexpected expenses like car tires, a battery, just to keep folks' wheels turning. And we also now have the River City Bread Basket, which is a client choice grocery outlet in the city of Waynesboro, Virginia, where all the food is free. We have everything from meats to produce to diapers to hygiene products, and everything in the store is free. And so we're really excited about that.
And tell people a little bit about how the store operates, because I found that amazing and wonderful as well.
Yeah, so the store we've tried to make really super simple for folks to come and visit. And so we have a registration process that the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank has us to do according to their regulations, but it's basic information. Folks often say, well, do I need to bring an ID? No, you absolutely don't. It is all on the honor system. And so folks will share with us, basic information, name, date of birth, their address, what are your monthly expenses, what is your income? And then based on that, they become qualified to be able to shop the store. And so my wife's idea was she wanted it to be a place where we focus on distribution with dignity.
Mm.
We wanted it to be a space where it's no different coming to us than if you went to a Trader Joe's or a Whole Foods. So that folks, we share this with our volunteers, don't hover over folks. Let them have a shopping experience.
Right.
We have numbers that say how much of this item you can get, but we stand back and let folks actually shop. And it's become a powerful resource in the community. We're in a neighborhood where folks can actually walk up because a lot of our folks don't have transportation. So we're really strategic and about where we place the store at, because we wanted everyone to be able to shop.
And that is so awesome. And you were awarded a grant to be able to open the store, right?
Absolutely.
And that's because you started out doing a mobile type of distribution.
Right.
And so I'm sure you guys should be so proud of the growth that you have made. And I know that you were talking about expanding a service that you have there, because initially most of your things start around food. But the last time that we talked, you were hoping to expand this kind of employment center. How's that going?
I really appreciate that question, Dee, because one thing I didn't mention is that this is actually this year in April on the 30th will be our third annual Job Fest,
Okay.
because our mandate is to empower the community through practical support. And so in order to do that, we want to make accessible job opportunities for individuals that are interested in getting in the workplace or in furthering their career. And one of the things that's really important to us is to make accessible second chance opportunities for folks to get back into the employment field.
Wonderful.
Oftentimes, folks have a felony that knocks them completely out of getting a job where they can grow or getting a job, period.
Right.
And so we were intentional about bringing on a career work center that actually has a connection with several second chance employers to make that available for folks who are earnestly trying to get back in. And so we're excited. We've got about 16 to 20 employers coming. We have folks that are going to be coming to help with resume building, how to interview. We'll have folks there who are going to be able to, hopefully donate clothing for interviews. I've shared with our employers, I want you to be able and ready to interview on the spot for folks because I don't want to waste anybody's time. If they're ready and want to get to work, I want them to be able to secure something that day if possible. So we're really excited about it. Very excited.
I'm excited for you, and I can't wait to have a progress report because it seems like everything, all of the endeavors that you've undertaken in this, project have just bloomed into beautiful, sometimes very unexpected things and in unexpected ways. So I love that. And I see it as a developing story. And as I told you before, I would love to see these life work projects spread across the country. And I am honored to have met you. I am so grateful to know people like you and your wife and what you're doing. So I want to thank you for hanging out with me again, sharing personal aspects of your life. But I just want to say that every community needs more AJs. And before we go, because there's only one of you, but you're continuing to do a lot of good work, are there any closing thoughts that you would like to share? And I certainly want you to tell people, and I will put it in the link, your website and those things, but you can certainly share that now.
Awesome. Dee, it's no secret that the climate that we are in is challenging to say the least. And so I think in, wrapping up our conversation today, one of the things that our organization has really tried to lean in, and as the director of outreach, I really take it personal to empower our folks with education and understanding that there are many times when those who are hovering right at the poverty level or right below the poverty level, many of our folks, regardless of, your economic upward mobility, are not participating in the voting system, right? They are not participating. And so I would just encourage folks to keep spreading the word of how important it is to be involved in the electoral process because, as we are learning, elections have consequences.
They certainly do.
Some of which are more dire than others, depending on the term. But I think that we are and have entered into a classic example of just that. And so I would just encourage folks to do that. Thank you so much for allowing us, me as a representative of our organization. I often share with folks, nothing that the Lifeworks Project does happens without volunteers. I appreciate compliments and I'm grateful, but trust and believe most everything that we do, we are dependent upon the goodness of people who say, hey, I've got a couple of hours I can spare. I'll help you unload food. It hasn't stopped. I am so grateful that people see the vision and they see that they can be a part of this. I often say, if you're looking for something to do in our community, this is it. Come alongside us. Let's build community together and see what great things we can do. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And thank your wife and all the volunteers that, as you say, see that vision and offer their support and efforts to it. So I want to wish you a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks for hanging out with me.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Tune in next week when I talk to an educator who is involved in training school therapists. He is passionate about his work, which has become even more important in today's climate. He's also a strong advocate for empowering the youth of his community. Just another example of how the outstanding efforts of everyday people work to build healthy, thriving communities. Thank Thank you for listening to Connections and Conversations. This is one of many wonderful interviews that we bring to you to help connect you to a larger community of advocates and changemakers across the country. You'll get a glimpse into the various ways people are making an impact in their communities. My hope is that it will inspire you to get engaged in some small way as well. We can't all do everything, but at this moment in history, we can all do something. What are you doing? One of the things you can do is to continue to listen, subscribe, and share this Advocacy Arena podcast. You can also join and support the growing grassroots Advocacy Arena community in other ways. Join our weekly live chats hosted on Spoutable every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe to our Substack to get great articles on important topics and exclusive access to extended interview conversations. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. We've got some exciting programming lined up. And keep listening to our regular podcast episodes wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, subscribe and give us that all-important 5-star review.